Vladimir Putin reportedly ordering Russian businesses to cut internet connections with the West by today. Could this be a sign Russia is getting ready to launch cyber attacks? Let's bring in David Kennedy. He's a former Marine and a cyber security and hacking expert. Let's get right to it. President Putin has reportedly ordered these Russian businesses to sever internet connections with the West by today. The question is this signaling the launch of cyber attacks?
I think what this is signaling is that, Russia's trying to create more of a defensive stance. We saw as soon as the Ukrainian conflict kicked off, there was a barrage of attacks that happened both towards Russia and towards Russian government installations as well as businesses. And this is more of a defensive posture in preparation to what would, most likely conclude to a more of an offensive nature that's going to happen later on down the road. Russia's already said, hey, we're going to retaliate against the West, and we can definitely expect, I think, cyber attacks being in that mechanism of what they would look to do next.
How vulnerable is the U.S. to Russian cyber attacks, do you think?
We've been working, several years of trying to increase, especially our critical infrastructure, our financial sector, but we are extremely vulnerable when it comes to, dealing with what we call nation-state level attacks or, really high sophisticated level of attacks. So our critical infrastructure is definitely vulnerable from a direct attack against Russia. Russia's been trying to infiltrate our grid and, water treatment facilities and things to that effect for a number of years. So it's definitely something that is a major concern for us from a cyber attack perspective and what they could potentially do back here in the States to impact our regular day of life.
Right. So then where would they attack? And is the U.S. equipped properly in order to defend ourselves of such possibilities?
Defense is definitely something that's going to be a multi-year project. We're not at a stance yet to say that we can defend against, Russian cyber attacks, unfortunately. But, the good news is that it's kind of the same type of thing from a nuclear arms perspective where it's mutually assured destruction. So if Russia starts to launch attacks here in the United States from a cyber warfare perspective, that's why you're seeing Vladimir Putin start to cut off ties from an internet perspective, very similarly how he did his economy, to try to weatherproof themselves from a sanctions perspective. They're very scared around the offensive capabilities that the United States has. So, it'd be interesting to see, but critical infrastructure, our financial sector, in retaliation for SWIFT, the SWIFT banning, are all possible areas that Russia would look at to potentially hit us very hard.
I got to touch on this one thing. Hackers usually are a bad thing, right? Whenever you hear about hackers, they're wreaking havoc somewhere on the internet. Now we're actually hearing about hackers doing some good around the world. They are joining the cyber fight against the Kremlin. I love this part. Westerners are even using a new text tool, apparently, to Russians, basically texting Russians directly about the war in an effort to counter Russia's propaganda campaign. It's incredible. I mean, what other kind of digital attacks are being waged on both sides? And is this the only possible way to get, the truth over to Russians? Their internet is being cut off. They do not have any journalists aside from state-run television in their country. This is the only way.
Yeah, what we're seeing is unprecedented, right? I mean, we're seeing a uniting of hackers all around the world, coming to Ukraine's assistance to try to inflict as much damage on the Russian government as possible from cyber attacks that aren't coming directly from, cyber war that we would traditionally see from a nation state like the United States launching attacks against Russia. We see them trying to circumvent and bypass the restrictions that Russia's placing on their citizens to give them real information around what's happening so that they're not getting, brainwashed by the government or, holding in information on what's occurring. And it's really having a major impact back in Russia to where they can communicate with individuals back here in the States. And it's really starting to change and curb a lot of the, views around what this war is doing and what the war actually is versus what the Kremlin's pushing out. So this is really an interesting time where we've never seen anything like it, where you're seeing such a focused campaign on information around causing damage and inflicting damage from a crowdsourcing perspective, which has never happened before.
David Kennedy, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.